5,000 hours. That's insane.
The key thing is respecting your team and trusting them and them trusting you.
Failure isn't a full stop, it's just another branch.
Oh, is that what dildos are for? Hello and welcome to episode 3 of IMPRINT, the Devcast by ZAUM Studio. It's a podcast about the making of Zero Parades for Dead Spies. I am your host, Jim Ashlevy, the game's VO director and writer, and today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of production. I'm joined by my dear colleagues, producers Jess Crawford and Tom Leigh, and together we're going to tackle the key questions. We're going to talk about what makes a great producer. We're going to talk about why producers even exist, a question on a lot of people's minds, I'm sure. And most importantly, the key question, why you, dear listener, have not wishlisted the game on Steam yet. What's up with that? Welcome to the podcast, Jess and Tom. Jess, how would you describe your role on this project and in this team?
So I'm a producer on Zero Parades, and I work primarily with the art teams. So that encompasses environment art, character art. We have beautiful paintovers and portraits that are in the game. Did some work briefly with animation. And overall, I would say I would just kind of see the day-to-day of these teams, making sure they're functioning, making sure they're doing their work and getting things uploaded and ready for the game.
Tom?
I'm the narrative producer on the team, so look over all the writers, a few other disciplines who contribute to our quests more generally. I also do a few other bits on release and helping out across the rest of the team.
You did mention that you're our narrative producer, and if narrative is something that piques your interest, make sure to check out the previous episode 2. Tom and Jess, I mean, I feel like, would you agree that producers on the whole are the unsung heroes of game dev? Do you feel like that?
I mean, I wouldn't call us heroes, but if you want to do that, Jim, you're welcome to.
I do want to do that because I mean, all jokes aside, I do feel like without you two, I don't think this game would ever be finished. And not just you two, the whole production team for that matter. If you had to explain in broader terms your kind of why producers matter or why game dev teams need producers, what would be your kind of pitch, I guess, or summary of what happens if a team doesn't have producers?
I like to think of it as just useful people, to be honest. You kind of have to get a feel of what the game you're making is, which can be hard if people are in the trenches really looking at a single dialogue, a single flow, and how that interacts with the larger thing. So I think that's part of it, is just communication and schedule. But I think the shape of what production is can change a lot per discipline, per team, personnel. Some leads and teams are really organized and have that high level, and then maybe you're a bit more interfacing with the other teams and departments or trying to help out in other ways. Whereas some teams you're really, herding cats. I had an old boss that used to like to say.
Is there anything in the way producers operate at our studio that is a bit different to other studios in your experience?
I do think the way that, if you do a Google search of what does a producer do, it's very scheduling, budget, day to day. And it's easy to forget how much time you have to spend talking to people and making sure that the people are okay. Is the morale okay? Are we going to hit this goal? And if we aren't, how do we make sure that people are okay with that? And I think it's easy to forget that people side of things. And I think it's a really nice way for a producer to slot in to the role. And into a studio and kind of make sure that things are going without kind of bringing down the hammer too much, like we spoke about earlier. So that's at least my experience of it.
I think our games are really narratively complex. and that impacts every other team. So I've been at places where everything's documented first. The documents can be trusted in that way. And then you kind of just make the game that you've documented. There might be a little bit of variation, and how much variation differs studio. ZAUM is one of the most I've been at. It's really important to see things in build. And then the whole idea might change on every single project I've worked on here. That really means that you need to be, again, as that build expert, keeping an ear out for what's gone in other teams, in other places, talking with the rest of your production team, and having an understanding of the development process to go, that might be a problem. Jess will have an intrinsic knowledge of, we can afford this is scheduled, this is not scheduled, what that is, and can really quickly interface with me on the narrative side or someone on the design side and have a conversation about it.
And I want to make sure we're on the same page as to what you mean when you say build, because I feel like when we talk about RPGs, the word build can mean, what you do as you're developing your character, as you're adding new skills to the skill roster and so on and so forth. But when you say build, I'm assuming you're talking about
the game, the executable.
The game, right.
I was going to answer just the build in the worst way possible. But
what are some of your favorite aspects of the game that have your fingerprints all over them?
It's a strange one as a producer. I think we kind of have our fingerprints everywhere in some sense, but very much in the background. I've made some killer spreadsheets that have gotten us pretty far. But in terms of favorite moments of the game, I think you hit this really beautiful crescendo when you're coming in as Herschel and you're exploring the bazaar and you're kind of trying to understand why you're here, what your partner had done before you had got there, and then you get to the office of your old associate Tempo. But it really starts to, I think, tip the scales of what has been kind of a mystery heavy into this is quite intense now, and where do we go from here? And I think it's really beautiful, and I think all of the teams have really come together in building that. And I think, there's a really beautiful environment for Tempo's office when you do get in there that really builds that intrigue and that kind of really allows it to hit hard.
Once you get into the office, there's something we really struggled to get the player to sort of look at. I'm not going to say what it is. It's a bit of a spoiler. Go and get in there and find out. I think Jess's art team did a really exceptional job of making that clear enough of this is where the attention should be, right? So it's not just making these beautiful paintings, but sort of leading the eye to serve the narrative. And
it was really tricky too, because we thought, we'll just paint it a certain way and that'll be fine. And you got in and he's like, it just doesn't hit. It does not hit at all. So it was very much, right, how can we get this to work together? What can your team do? What can my team do? And I think now it's at a very, very lovely point.
I think it's a beautiful example of how when we say we are a story-first game dev studio or a narrative-first game dev studio, this doesn't necessarily mean that the narrative materializes as written text on the screen in each and every instance. It could easily mean sometimes it's an environment that tells the story, and there are no words spoken. Speaking of unsung heroes, I think the art team in a big way is, as far as narrative goes, also kind of a team of unsung heroes, because it's not just about the writing, even though I think when people come to a ZAUM game, they expect the writing to be sort of the key thing that is in the spotlight, when really it's all of those dimensions coming together, all of those disciplines coming together. Sorry, I need to stand up for a minute because this is really annoying. There are these sensors on the ceiling, and if nobody moves for 20 minutes, the lights turn off. So it's really annoying. I need to stand up to convince the sensor that there is a sentient being still in this studio. So I need to just move around, wave my arms.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
That's quite a lot of movement.
It's quite a move. Yeah.
Tom, what are some of your favorite moments from the game? ones that have your fingerprints on them?
In the demo, if you go to the west, it's a little hidden. You might not run them in your first playthrough, so have a look. There's a character who I think is named the Phone Sex Addict, who I really love. I think the dialogue there and the performance is so gross in that way, or that hitting that seedy tone that we go for.
And sorry to stop you there, but because we are focusing on production and producers, were you going to say that?
Yeah, I was going to speak on the many hats of producers. One of our very own producers voices that character.
I don't know how much time we have. You have to help me fill it in.
One of the things that I try and champion on any team is playing the build excessively. I'm the one playing in a lot of our playthroughs. Sometimes you might have the sound quite low. Sometimes what we're using to sort of share the screen on a group playthrough might not share sound. And so while we're intricately discussing if this flow is working, if we want to change something about it, what that is, I'm just listening to sort of heavy phone sex breathing in my ears while trying to track the conversation happening, which is always fun and good to do. But I think it was that moment, and I had to sort of play that in public and was like, this is working. We can sort of leave this character in this dialogue now. This is reaching the feeling that we want. So yeah, I love him.
Shout out to CJ. Fantastic performance. We had too much fun at the studio. And also writing Frederick was one of my personal highlights as a member of the writers team. He is so adorable.
That's an interesting word for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would use that word, Jim, but
we can cut this if we don't want. This might be a little bit political for it. You know the leaked emails of Elon Musk trying to get to the island that came out recently? I think that's really Frederick coded.
girls for the win.
So there are a lot of people out there who haven't had the pleasure to play the game yet. So if you had to describe the experience of playing through Zero Parades to someone who's maybe Zero Parades curious, let's say, how would you pitch the experience to that person?
My favorite thing about it is it feels very much like a journey of discovery. I feel like you're discovering Herschel, she's discovering herself, but also I really enjoy just speaking to people and then eventually connecting the dots and being like, in the same area as the phone sex addict, you can speak to these ex-pilots. And so you can speak to them, you can kind of try and figure out what their deal is. And then later on, you can come back and be like, oh, well, there's this, they kind of ask you to deliver something to somebody. And you can kind of start to pick into that and you discover a little bit more about them as characters. And you go, oh, that's interesting. And there's a lot of that throughout the game as a whole as well. So I think that's something that I would call to and ask people to lean into, is that kind of joy of discovery.
Let's not worry about spoilers that much, speaking of the demo. So if you were to just limit yourself to the stuff that happens in the demo, what would you highlight, Tom?
There's a great moment towards the end of the demo where you can frantically sort of fumble through some clothing, a pile of clothing, and depending on how you succeed that role, you'll either wear the most ridiculous hat, which I think is excellent. There's great jiggle physics from on there, great work from the art team putting that together, or a more sort of credible disguise in what that is, and use that to pass through a crowd, get away unnoticed, maybe lose some pursuers.
What are some of the other ways that changing your look in Zero Parades benefits your progression through the game?
All the clothing has stats like in Disco Elysium. So there's the most basic version of, I'm wearing this hat because it gives me +2. What that is. There's some slightly more hidden versions where maybe if you're wearing a good combination of clothing, you might impress some characters who do that, which will give you maybe not a totally different route, but a bonus to a check that you didn't previously expect or see. But we have some characters who are really big fans of a certain pop star. If you sort of dress young, maybe Western plays there, they'll open up to you more and sort of be more responsive, maybe give you some more useful information.
I talked to them wearing the handlebar mustache and they just bullied me so hard. It was very upsetting.
Oh no.
I can imagine. That's not very, that's very how do you do, fellow kids, isn't it?
With my 2 skateboards. I also think with the clothing, I mean, again, shout out to the art team, but there is some incredible fits. I mean, they've worked so hard to make something that feels really cool, really unique. We put a lot of work into understanding what different age groups of the location would wear. And so I think Herschel can, I mean, I love getting all of the different outfits, putting on different parts, and just then posting that somewhere at work and being like, look at this combination, isn't this so cool? Or even just getting a full set and being like, wow. So yeah.
We have a character in the demo called the King of Trade, who also voiced one of the producer. Fun fact, Matt Quinn.
Incredible.
Yes, shout out to Matthew Quinn.
I promise the whole game is not voiced by production, but those are 2 obvious examples near and dear to me. He's very reactive to what you have, and including the name King of Trade will really offer different things depending on what you have to offer.
For now, enter the economic war zone. Intellectually puny freakling. There is no capital, only objects.
From really simple, like cigarettes and things like it, all the way up to some, a dildo and things like it that might be exciting or might help you later or might not.
As some people would say, the essentials. Cigarettes and dildos, and then all the other stuff that people might need in their day-to-day.
Yeah.
What are some of the cool elements of Herschel's toolkit that you feel are worthy of highlighting in this little episode here?
I'm a really big fan of our flashlight, which I know it feels like a very basic tool, but we put a lot of time into this because we wanted to make something that felt iconic and had an iconic kind of silhouette, but also had that 90s feel, that very analog feel. And so we spent a lot of time, a lot of iterations kind of designing it, concepting it. We went from like this chunky, big wind up thing to like something incredibly small, like would a spy walk around with a massive flashlight. And in the end, we've kind of settled with this very incredibly interesting design where it's kind of this multi flashlight where you can kind of hold it up normally and it would angle this way, or you could angle it outwards and hold it like that. And I think it's just really cool. It's interesting as well. I know from an outside perspective, I wouldn't think so much work would go into making a flashlight look cool. And I know, like, as a producer, when somebody was like, oh, I think we should look at the flashlight again, I was like, oh, come on. But it was so worth it. And so I think it's a really beautiful design and really cool. And yeah, the way that we get to use it within the world, I think is really, really nice, and get to highlight beautiful parts of some of the interiors.
So how do we get to use it? What are some of the more surprising ways players can use the flashlight?
I think what's interesting, so you can always navigate an interior without having the flashlight. So again, in the demo, you can go to where the King of Trade is located. He's in the animal zone. And you can get in there and you can have a look around. You can traverse it. It's not going to be impossible. We're not going to block that off for you as a player. But if you do have that flashlight, if you return, you can maybe find things, find different orbs, or find different like items that you might just not have seen without it. So it really is worth then going back, re-exploring locations once you do have that tool to just get a little bit more of the flavor of the world.
You know what kind of tool I'm dreaming of right now? Like a long stick or a broom, maybe, that I could just raise up to the ceiling, switch on the lights.
That's what I use my dildo for. What do you use yours for?
Oh, is that what dildos are for? What would you say is the biggest difference in terms of gameplay, maybe for players who have already experienced Disco Elysium, maybe have played through the game multiple times? What is different this time around? What are some of the things that they haven't seen or experienced playing Disco?
So there's an evolution of our health system, for lack of a better word, which we call pressures. Disco had the great morale and health system that really reflected, I think, who Harry was, in that he was, at least my Harry, always very close to the verge of absolute mental breakdown in that place. Herschel's not so much like that. Certainly has her own problems and intricacies, but isn't, a this is your fault away from tearing up a hotel room and forgetting who she is. And so the pressure system with how delirious Herschel is, how anxious Herschel is, and then her fatigue reflects that in a different way. That then leads into, I think, the way we've evolved skill checks in an interesting way. Certainly I like a cheeky bet, so this sort of gambling system is exciting, which is exerting. So you can exert on any skill check, which adds a dice giving advantage. If people have played tabletop RPGs, they'll know what advantage is, but you roll 3 dice instead of 2 and take the 2 highest. So your odds will considerably improve. But at the expense of some of your pressures. So clue in the name exerting, you might exert yourself on a physical check and therefore be more fatigued than if you didn't, which can really spiral if you also take damage as a result of failing that check or something like it.
So even though, much like in Disco, the character comes pre-built in many ways, you can't really customize their appearance, but there are ways to still kind of go into the game with your own version of Herschel. So what are some of the ways that the character can be built going into the game?
So in the demo, you'll see as you go through the new game, you'll pick a preset of what's there. Like you said, Jim, very similar to Disco's one. In our full game, we'll have a character creation, fully custom, where you'll be able to assign your stats totally freely. In the demo, you'll pick from 3 presets. On top of that, instead of the signature skill system, which Disco used, which raised the skill cap and also give you an extra point in that skill, you'll instead start with 3 skill points to assign to your 3 faculties. That's what we call our groups of skills. And nudge a little bit where your Herschel is to start.
Another key tenet of our gameplay design this time around that kind of, I guess, has echoes of Disco Elysium emanating from it, but I don't think we go all in in Disco as much as we do on Zero Parades. It's the key tenet of failure and how failure as an experience, as something that none of us can fully escape going through life, how that has informed the way we have written the game, designed the systems in the game, and so on and so forth. So Jess, can you speak to that a little bit? How does fading forwards inform the gameplay experience and the design behind Zero Parades?
Absolutely. Like you said, Jim, failing forward has been such a key tenet to everything. I think one thing that we wanted to avoid is having players, and I know I'm guilty of this, save scumming and just being like, oh, I didn't like the outcome of that, I'm going to go back and redo it again. What we try and do is give the players options, and so that failure isn't a full stop, it's just another branch. I think a really good example of this is our dramatic encounters that are used throughout the game, but you do have one towards the end of the demo when you have to escape somebody following you throughout the bootleg bazaar. And so each point that you come to is just another path. It is not, oh, Herschel tries to jump off this rail and she dies, try again, because that's just boring. And I think there's so much more interesting within the failure and within having to kind of live with that, and it also reflects where Herschel is as a character, where she's going throughout the game. And I also think it's just interesting as people having to live with failure. Yeah, key lessons from my therapist, I think, is that one. But yeah, it is something that we've held very dear as we've gone through. And I think we ourselves have kind of failed forward in getting to this point in the game as well. So yeah, very human experience, I would say.
Part of the fun stuff has been making sure the successes are as fun as the failures. I think sometimes we've, in previous iterations of quests, gone, oh crap, I succeeded this check for the first time, and we need to make that more fun because it's way funnier if you fail and things like it, which maybe not every player will see. But it was funny how quickly it evolved from you have to fail forward to actually being good at stuff should also be fun, which I think we also managed towards the end, but yes.
Something that people might not realize, I mean, Jess, you mentioned these fascinating spreadsheets that you've put together and how they should be printed out and put in a museum. You didn't say that, but I got the impression that that's sort of the way you view your masterpieces in the shape and form.
I'm glad you got the implication there, Jim.
Yeah, that was the implication there. I feel like people don't realize how much time producers actually spend on just playing the game. I might be wrong, but I certainly get the impression that you two just play the game so much that I'm assuming that by the time the game comes out, you are like ready to move on and play something else for a change. Am I right? Am I wrong in assuming this?
I think I'm on my third full playthrough at this moment. Just like, and I think Tom touched on this earlier, but we have to be experts in the game. A QA, shout out to QA. We love shouting out at the departments in this podcast. QA are fantastic, but us producers, we're so close to the teams and we have to know what's going on. We have to make sure things are going in. People are wonderful and they say things are done and I check it and they're not done. So it's a lot of like making sure people are checking their work, but also understanding how things sit within a larger context as well and making sure, is this artwork actually going to fit? Because does it work against the background? Have we checked this? And so, yeah, I think, I'm not sure if we are, I don't know, I think we're up there with QA in terms of hours probably, but yeah, I think we are probably the people that play the game the most, or should be playing the game the most at the very least.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things about something so complex like Zero Parades. It's so open. I think there aren't many, here's a gate and this gate will open in, when you have the magic stone and that unlocks 5 more characters that you talk to. But really almost everything's available from the start of the game or from very early on. And you have to put together what that is as a result. That just makes, every time you add a new character into that, the combinations, increase in factorial. I can give you some numbers, Jim.
Please
I joined
do.
this project in October of 2024. And I've got 2,300 hours in Steam right now. I've got another 200 in our demo. And that doesn't count Unity. I reckon maybe add another 80% or something. I reckon I'm a smidge under 5,000 within about a year. Plus spreadsheets in what that is.
5,000 hours. That's insane. I mean, people do come to this podcast to get information on the game. And I guess what we've learned here right now is that Zero Parades is going to be a 5,000 plus hour winner. How many hours have you racked up, Jess, or have you not bothered to?
I'm shamefully not even in the 1,000 hour mark.
Boo.
Yeah,
Are you even working, Jess?
Yeah, I'm basically
I'm seeing
not
some
working.
guitars in the background. Are you just like making music and
I'm just
to produce this game.
strumming out. I'm just watching other people play the game. That's what's going on.
One of the differences again is that the only way I can see my team's content is in the build, right? And things like it. Whereas lots of our art really comes to life in the build when you add some of our screen effects and things like it. But you can see our painted environments beforehand and go, yes, that's painted in what that is. For me to go, this dialogue works, and realize it's done, I've got to play through the dialogue. So I don't think it's bad numbers on Jess there at all. I think
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm going to sleep well tonight. No.
What are some of the other difficult challenges that you've had to face as a producer on this project?
I feel like for me, some of the most challenging parts, particularly as a producer, is being that guy. By which I mean, I got so many wonderful artists that want to run off and do so many exciting things, and I have to be like, no, please, let's just do what we said we were going to do, and then maybe later we can do this thing. But that's again, I think why producers are important, because people could run off with creativity. It's a part of the job, and that's okay. But I think that's a challenge, and especially with such an art-heavy game. And yeah, I think there is so much beautiful artwork going on, and there's so many things where people go, "Can I just do this? Can I just do this?" It's like, yeah, I'd love for you to, but it's not adding up. So yeah, that's where I would.
I loved in your episode with Casper and Ilya, Jim, it just started with, this environment got removed, but we really like it in those ones. There was a good few of those. And I think when everyone plays the game, and when you all play the demo, you're going to be like, I can't believe they cut art. That's crazy. It's giant. Like I said, the narrative complexity to keep in your head, we all celebrate about, as we see. But I think tracking when a character is done for voiceover,
Right.
because again, well, what if I want to ask that character about this totally unrelated quest, or what that is, was an exceedingly hard spreadsheet to make. Let's put it that way. That was, in terms of the more theoretical production, people will see in the demo some barriers around. There's a couple tricks that we put in. Knowing where to draw that line and what the impact would be, also quite hard. And what that was a long conversation about, one, we want it to be good and hopefully everyone enjoys, but two, be able to make it polished and finished. We're still working on the rest of the game. Knowing, but you can get a modifier or an item or a thing from this guy who's behind this wall, therefore we can't draw the line there, and things like it. And as we slowly put together this sort of map of what the demo would be, probably if you do everything, I reckon you'll get up to 4 hours. But it was a hard-earned 4 hours, put it that way.
Are there any gameplay elements that were introduced sort of midway through the process of developing Zero Parades that had you go, whoa, what is this? Why is this here? Why was this not mentioned half a year ago?
This is not a gameplay element, but this is one that comes very recently to mind, is like Ilya from our character in episode 1. He's like, I just want to color grade all of the environments. And I'm like, oh, okay, love that. So it was quite a shock, and it came very late. I was like, oh, like, do we need to? They're already pretty nice. Like, and he was going, I think, you start off in the demo and in the game itself, you start off in this in Photo 24, which is where Herschel kind of sets herself up for the entire game. It's where you kind of go to sleep, come back, and kind of gather yourself. And he's like, I just need this to be really standout and beautiful. I go, okay, I'll let you do that one, and I'll let you do a couple of others. And then they just look so beautiful that we were like, come on, okay, let's do the others. I think that's okay. But yeah, it's all about like really assessing what we're going to get out of it, how much time it's going to take, and then also like, yeah, if it's going to be impactful enough that it's worth us kind of putting something at risk. But yeah, not gameplay wise, but definitely visuals wise.
I can't think of a gameplay thing that hasn't changed in the last bit that we. So I think we're always building the train, while we're on the tracks, kind of thing.
Can you explain what color grading even means? Because there might be listeners out there who are not familiar with that term. And yes, I'm saying this because I'm trying to cover up the fact that it is in fact myself who doesn't know what color grading is.
Smooth. Yeah, I'll do my best. So basically you could, and this is common throughout film as well, but you can film or create an environment or whatever, and then you would put some kind of overlay on it so that you can adjust the colors within there, and that would give it a certain look. So you can say give a room, turn it from kind of a greeny location to a more purpley location, and that can change the tone, it can change the vibe, it can change the kind of sense of what the player gets out of it. So yeah.
So it started with one room or one environment, one sort of indoor location.
Yeah.
And then it just expanded over the rest of the map pretty much because it just looked too pretty to resist.
It was really nice, honestly. And it's one of those where I just hate to say it. I'm like, you were right. You were right the whole time. And this was also, I might add, something that we'd not done before, something that had not come up. We didn't know how to do it. We're just like, okay, this is something we're going to do now.
Jess is a great producer, and all great producers should do, which is, it's not just saying no, right, and enforcing the schedule and looking at the thing. Sometimes, and I think a lot at ZAUM, like I said, is we haven't got the whole game in our heads before we're playing it. It's about being like, let's try it in the smallest way possible, look at it, and then be honest with ourselves about this, if this is important. And sometimes it goes in the way of the schedule, and we go, this is not worth it. And sometimes we go, this is too excellent, we have to do this. And you know, sometimes as a producer, you can get obsessed with the numbers, right? And be like, no, there's no way we can do this, it's impossible. I think that, really talented producers make it work in that way. And know when to push and when to hold back and go, actually, we should do that. It's what's going to take this from good to great.
I think as well, going back to that kind of the point I made on being like the challenging part of like being that guy and saying no, I also find that that's what the art teams have taught me is I shouldn't just say no. There is points where this is worth it. And like, I just said, you were right all along. And there's points where I am right. I'll give myself some credit. But it is then that collaboration. And I think that's what's important is like, I'm not coming in as this staunch enforcer. We have to come at it as like, working together, collaborating and making sure that, the people who are making the game, the contributors understand where we're coming from when we're trying to kind of understand things, but also us understanding the artistic process and saying, this might actually be worth the time and worth the push.
Right. What's the worst kind of producer that you two have had experience with
Oh man.
in your career? Or maybe you're one of them, in which case feel free to just describe yourself. But what are some of the big no-nos of what a producer should do or be?
We'll start with the A's, right? Andy, ABBA, what the ones in terms of the worst producers? I'm joking. I was trying to think while you were talking. I hope I haven't worked with anyone with those names, but don't think I have. If I have, I'm very sorry. The thing you can slip into as a producer, something certainly I can slip into, is, and this really takes a lot of trust from the team and the team that you have, is not going through the motions. You could probably get away with it as a producer in a way that other disciplines can't, by like showing up to the meetings, posting meeting notes, and going to your next meeting in what that way is. And people probably won't notice for a while in what that is. Eventually, they'll play the game and notice, but
But then it's not going to be the producers who are going to get the blame, right?
Exactly, right? In other way, it won't be someone coming first going, this isn't working, or what that is. And maybe sometimes it should be in that way. I think that can start. So sometimes people will just maybe doubt, or you can fall into it, especially if a team keeps saying no, of like, hey guys, we have to enforce the schedule. We need to track this, whatever it is. It takes some energy that you get from the team in order for you to give them your energy to say, let me play this quest and just make sure I understand it. Let me, read through this dialogue. Let me go through this brief. I know I don't need to. It's already been sent to art, but I should understand it in what that way is. Because then those moments that I spoke about where you have that knowledge and go, something's changed, that's off, I don't know about that, X person doesn't know about that, can really shine. Equally, there's like the other side of I was going to say the ring, which I don't think is a saying, but like I'm thinking of like the Sauron ring of what that is. Other side of the coin is maybe better, where
Dildo?
Yeah, I think that's what like I'm just saying. Other side of the dildo, and you can get or you can is the difference. So it's what to do, and where you can get a bit tyrannical, right? And I think sometimes that power or that feeling to enforce the schedule or to enforce, I've played the game X amount, therefore I should have this opinion on this. Sometimes you also, the key thing is respecting your team and trusting them and them trusting you about it. I think it's easy to slip into both of those ends of the spectrum, right? Where you're either like a glorified secretary or the least qualified game director there ever was. And you need to strike the balance of what your team needs in that as well, right? If you have a team of rock stars, maybe you are just making sure they've got the notes and doing it. If you've got a team that maybe needs some more guiding, maybe they haven't played the game as much or they're not as used to this process, maybe you've got to have a more of a hand on the lead in what that is.
And I think it's so easy to slip into either of those, to just either take your finger off the pulse or to just get too involved in it. I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest lesson is like, I feel like I know my teams pretty well, but they are the experts and I have to trust them in what they tell me. I think there's moments where you have to interrogate that and be like, are you sure? And you go, okay, you're the expert. You know what you're doing. I'm going to trust you when you say that. So I think that's really important as well, is like putting that trust in the team, and then they'll put that trust back into you. And then it makes those moments easier where you do have to kind of, put up a bit of a stance on something.
Feel free to point fingers and name names, just like Tom did.
Probably me. That's the worry.
No, it's not you. I've got someone in mind. They don't work here.
Listening to you two talk about the difficulties of finding the right balance between being involved, but then also giving your team space and room to breathe and experiment and so on. I mean, does it mess with your head at all to kind of be a co-author of this story and this game, but also not have anyone really associate you specifically with like coming up with this world and this game and this design and all that?
I think it does when you ask questions like, one of the questions that you started with, Jim, is like, what's something that you contributed to? And I'm like, well, I couldn't point to one thing specifically, but I think producers who come into this, I think we understand that's the nature of this job, is kind of silently kind of guiding the hand, and letting that happen. I think also, I kind of prefer being backstage and not being up front. And I think that's the really nice thing about it, is that you get to kind of platform these incredibly talented people, and letting them shine in a very nice way, by kind of pushing them in the right direction every now and again.
A huge testament to this team on Zero Parades is the trust that the lead group have in that. And sometimes you overcorrect it and go, no, it should be this. And they'll also, a really good trait from a team, go, no, it should be this, right? People don't really get stepped over on this project. I'm quite like confrontation. That's okay. I don't mind someone saying, no, it should be this. And I really disagree. And then coming from that place of respect and finding it, hopefully the game's good. It is good. Yeah.
It is good.
Yeah, would you recommend Zero Parades?
I think with 5,000 hours, I think you would.
It's like a horseshoe. It goes the other way. Once you hit that other thing. Give the demo a try, is what I'd say, right? I'm really proud of how the demo feels like the rest of the game. I think we did a good job of that. The demo's free. Go play it. If you think it's good, I can certainly recommend Zero Parades. If you think it's bad, I can recommend Zero Parades. So that's all right.
A win-win.
I feel like it's time to wrap this up because we have a game to finish after all, and it's getting late. However, if you were an actual spy in the real world, what would your unique skill set be that you would be able to bring to the table? What kind of spy would you be, Jess?
I feel like it's about time I got to put my acting degree to some good use. So I think I'd be very good at like donning different costumes and becoming different people. Though I think in reality I would be more like a Count Olaf type from A Series of Unfortunate Events. So I would dress up, but everybody would know it's me deep down. And I'd think I was really cool. But yeah, I think ultimately I would be a kind of character spy.
Thespian spy.
Oh, a thespian spy.
I love that.
Mm.
I'm like over 2 meters tall, so sometimes I feel like more of a Bond villain than a Bond in that way. I think like the metal teeth or something, I could get a good look going with the shaved head.
For people not familiar with the metric system, what is that in, like, I guess feet and inches is what people use in other parts of the world?
What a cultural victory for the Brits on the podcast. The Estonians asking for feet and inches. We've won. Ship it. I'm 6'7" in what that is.
Impressive.
I did it myself. Thank you. No help from anyone else. It was all me. I reckon I'd be this. I don't really think about like the consequences of things, as people who maybe have been on a night out with me will know. So I think I'm the spy you send first to test the defenses, right? I'm like I'm not making it out, but that's okay. I'm not going back to prison, man. That's my kind of spy.
Would love to have you guys in my crew of spies. Any day. Any day of the week. Let me switch this light back on so we could, say goodbye to each other. Here it is. Hey, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't cover that you want to say before we say adieu?
Play the demo. Wishlist the game. It's really cool.
And they said it better. It's free. Give it a go.
Give it a go. What have you got to lose?
And that concludes episode 3. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. We deeply, deeply appreciate you. If you haven't wishlisted the game on Steam yet, make sure to do so. If you have any thoughts or comments, any questions you'd like to see answered in future episodes, drop us a comment, get in touch on social media, whatever is your personal preference. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you in the next one.